Let's hop into this demo. As you can see, we're in the Cato management application. We already have our site connected. So this is a site in Houston, and it's currently connected to two ISP connections, one being a 1 gig fiber connection, the other one a 5G 300 meg connection. So I just connected these, so it's been up for 8 minutes, as you can see, and we're connected to the Dallas pop, which is the best performing one for us currently at this point in time. So if we go ahead, we close out of this and we hop into our notifications. You can see I have my other socket connected and it's ready to be assigned. We're going to go ahead and click accept, and we're going to assign this to the same site that we already have up and running. So we do that, and you see we have the option to either replace the currently assigned socket or to set as our passive spare. So go ahead and click OK here. And so that's been assigned successfully. Now we'll hop on over to network. We'll click on our site, and we can see that HA status is not ready. This is because we just did this, but we'll go ahead and go over here and take a look at the socket itself. So we'll give it a few minutes, and we should start to see some activity as we refresh. So it looks like the second socket is listed here, but it's still not connected and doesn't have the keep alive formed between it and the first socket. So we'll check back in 2 to 3 minutes. So it's been exactly 3 minutes, which is really the perfect amount of time to get a cup of coffee. But here we are, both are connected and our HA status is ready. So let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and bring up a really great YouTube video that I like. And check it out if you have time. This is Convergence. It's a newish podcast by Cato Networks. I think we probably have 8 or 9 episodes up there now, but feel free to check it out in your own time. So let's go ahead and start playing this, and I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the primary socket.
How did we manage to complicate the information technology so much? I thought life was getting easier.
Well, that's the thing, right? So for every new innovation, in technology, on the consumer and on the IT side, there are certain things that have to be done in order to maintain security. So kind of through the natural evolution of, solving problems as technology. So I've gone ahead and muted the video just so you could hear me talk, but the video is playing. I unplugged the other socket. As you can see, the video didn't skip a beat. We didn't lose any audio. We didn't have any issues with the video. So let's switch back over to our Cato management application. And we'll go back to our monitoring tab. And let's click on our site to check the current status. So as you can see, the primary socket is now offline and no longer connected, but we're still up and running. We had no loss in connectivity. The video played perfectly, like I said before, and we're now going through our second pop. And then the same would happen here if we lost either of our WAN links. We would still be up and running on the other link. So let's take a look one more time. We'll hop back to our network, to our socket configuration. We could see exactly what's happening, right? The primary socket is now disconnected. HA status is obviously not ready because they're no longer both connected and have a keep alive active, but the secondary socket has taken over the role of the primary socket. So thank you so much for participating again in the SASE Expert certification, and we'll see you in the next video. Hello, my name is Evan Saf Networks, and thank you so much. We're really delighted that you're taking part in our SASE Expert Level 3 certification. Hopefully it's been a great experience so far. In this session, we're going to talk about visibility and using SASE dashboards. Now, visibility is extremely important from both a networking and a security perspective in your organization. If you think about networking activities and outages and problems and degradation, sometimes they're not readily apparent. And without proper visibility and analytics into what's happening in your environment, you can have broader issues or outages that cause productivity loss and business interruption. Not only that, but it makes users unhappy. Even worse is that if you don't have complete unified visibility into all the aspects of your security, you could have a security breach or ransomware incident that could, potentially cost millions of dollars, hurt your reputation, and make you a continued target for further attacks. Now, we have always had this concept of, having separate security appliances in our legacy architecture that are all logging and aggregating information. But the problem is that even with a SIEM, you're not always getting, an easy way to correlate this information and understand what is happening in the environment. Now, SASE has fundamentally changed that because it's converged networking and security and given all of the security engines and all of the logging shared context and correlation as you go. So you no longer have to manually correlate everything or depend on complicated SIM configurations to make sure that you don't miss an alert or something that's happening. You can still export to SIM if that's a part of your workflow and you want to correlate your SASE data with everything else going on in your environment, but you no longer have to depend solely on that as your single point of prevention for letting you know that something suspicious is going on. Sorry. So let's hop into our Cato management application. So here we are in the Cato management. Your filter and grouping in the Cato management application here. Right here now we have. So here we are in the Cato management application. And when you first log in, you're presented with the topology page. Now the topology page really gives you a high level look into the connectivity status of your overall deployment, including all of your sites and mobile users that are currently connected. So in this case, we're connected to my lab account. And this is a really good idea of what you should expect from SASE, right? Quick visibility and full collection and correlation of data and activity. But in this case, we're looking very specifically at these sites and what's connected or not. We can easily click on one, right? And we have some options here and we can see kind of some information about their ISPs and their connectivity. You can also see, current link state, as well as recent connections and other things. But more so, you can click down here at the bottom and really hop to some areas that, zoom in on some specific things that you might be interested in. But really, you could see that, currently we have 4 sites disconnected as shown here, and one of our sites is connected. We can also see that we have one current connected SDP user. So if this were a production environment, in just a couple of seconds, we could see that we probably have a pretty significant issue. Fortunately for us, this is a lab environment, so this doesn't really matter that much. These sites are offline on purpose, but it gives you an idea of what to expect when you're looking at SASE for managing your users and locations. Now, you can customize your filter and grouping in the Cato management application here. Right here now we have the default grouping, but maybe you want to change this to customize, right? We want to group things by which POP they're connected to. Maybe we want to group sites, which country they're in. And here you can see kind of, a representation of this grouping. We can kind of compress some things if we want. Or we can, go over here and reset back to the default grouping. It really gives you some flexibility as far as, identifying commonalities, right? Maybe you're having issues regarding sites that are connected to the same type of ISP, or maybe they're, in the same country or connected to the same point of presence. Whatever it may be, you can find that commonality here just quickly by filtering, and it's a really easy way to manage the solution. But next, now that we've addressed the topology page, let's get it right into the security, which is really a little bit, more exciting and interesting and definitely more visual. So let's start with our threats dashboard. So this is, a high level view into all the threats that occurred in the environment. And, in this case, right, we're looking at the last 2 days and there's not really a whole lot to look at. So let's go ahead and click up here and we can enter, some custom timeframes, or we have, some things that we can choose in here that are just out of the box, right? So let's click last month and let that load. And as you can see, we've got a couple of more things going on here, right? So for our top threats, we can see that we had, 19, logged instances of Mimikatz attempted, as well as 12 for Log4j remote code execution. Then we have, a couple more things: Java payloads, XML RPC attack, and these are the top things that have happened in the environment. Then we also get a nice timeline here around, when things have occurred. You can see we've been pretty steadily good for a little while, and then we had, all of a sudden on October 14th, looks like we had, 42 IPS hits, 2 next generation anti-malware, and 18 regular malware, and then a couple more just a few days later, right? And we can see over here that our top, countries threats are coming from is from Ireland and from Russia. And then if we go down, we see a nice breakdown of our IPS threats by type, as well as the top hosts that these threats are originating from, and the top users associated with these threats. So this might give you a quick idea of something that is infected that you might need to remediate, or really just give you a good place to start and understand, what's happening in your environment. Same here with anti-malware, right? We can see, the top types of files that were detected by anti-malware. We see a couple of them are ICARs, which is great for testing. And then we can also see, our hosts as well. So we have a slightly different host here, but we definitely have the same user again. So what's interesting about this too is, a lot of this is interactive as far as, we talked about this spike that we had a couple days ago. And maybe we want to just, click here. We could zoom in. And now we're, focused in on that very specific time period, right? So we can see exactly what was happening during that spike that was triggering these events. So it looks like, a lot of ICAR test files, and then a bunch of, geo-restriction stuff, as well as web application attack. And we see it's really this demo user at Cato Marketing and a couple of hosts. But so that being said, maybe we want to look into this a little bit more. Like, why is, who's trying to download Mimikatz? What are they doing? What are they doing? What are they doing with these other threats? So we can go up here and we can pick on any one of these specific threats. And maybe we want to see, well, geo-restriction. What is this person trying to access that is geo-restricted, right? Let's go ahead and click View Events. And it's going to take us to Event Discovery. So Event Discovery is built into the Cato Management application, and it provides, full access to all of the events logged in Cato. And these are, connectivity events, networking events, as well as security events, all here in one place, correlated in advance for you, and easy for you to search with either, selections, customizable queries, or really, just adding these filters, right? We also have a bunch of presets out of the box for, some of the most common use cases that you might want to look at. But in this case, let's, stay with what we got, right? So we're looking at security under IPS, and we're looking at the geo restrictions. And don't forget, we're still filtered on this very specific date range. So if we look here, we can see, Russian Federation, geo restricted, Dallas. Let's expand this a bit, right? So what we see here is we're hitting the geo restriction rule. So I configured a rule that blocks all traffic to and from the Russian Federation. We can see that, the device that was being used was ESS Windows, which is my Windows machine here. Then we can also see, the destination IP as well as the source IP. So this has been blocked just because of that rule that has been created. But it's a really great way to increase your security posture by preventing interaction, to and from countries that you really don't have any legitimate need to interact with. And these could be, super risky countries from a cybersecurity perspective that are like, Russia, North Korea, Iran, and really there's not a lot of use cases for interacting with them, and it, can prevent their hackers from really attacking you to some extent. So now that we've looked at this, and we'll come back and look at this in a little bit more detail, let's hop over to our Cloud Apps dashboard. So this dashboard is all about Cloud Apps discovery and really visibility into Shadow IT and SASE. So here we're looking at, still this very specific time range. We'll go ahead and zoom this out a little bit so we can see a bit more and look at the last month. So what we can see here is, we don't have any high-risk apps, which is great. We have 237 total discovered apps. If we hover over here, we can see, a little bit more information about what these different things mean. 13 total users using these apps, which is not many, but don't forget this is, a lab environment. So all 13 users are probably me in different various logins and activities that I'm using. 34.4 gigabytes of network use in this given period. And then you can see, sanctioned versus unsanctioned apps. Now, in the Cato Management application, you can tag apps as sanctioned or unsanctioned, which really makes it easier for your management capabilities as far as how you identify and look at these apps, as well as how they're displayed here in this console. And then you can see a risk breakdown, right? So we have 147 apps that are low risk, 42 medium risk, and then these are our top unsanctioned apps. by risk score. But maybe we want to look at, all our apps, and maybe this changes a little bit, but we have some things here. And then maybe we see something like Gecko. I don't know what Gecko is. Maybe we should go ahead and go to apps catalog and take a look, see what is this. So Gecko is a company focused on acquiring new patents and technologies for broadband communications. So that's interesting. They're headquartered out of Denver, Colorado. They have very small, 1 to 10 employees. They have no form of compliance, and then they have some limited security capabilities in their product. And what's really fantastic about this is just a couple of seconds, I didn't have to go doing my own Google search looking for all kinds of information. I was able to get a real good idea of what this is and if it really belongs in my environment. And at this point, to be honest, I'm not fully sure. I'd have to talk to, some more people and kind of figure out what's going on. But the important part here is looking at this compliance and security information is that within, the Cato SASE cloud, you can form policies around these things, right? So maybe you want to block any application outside of whatever is accepted and approved that doesn't have, SOC 2 and ISO 27001 compliance. You can definitely do that. Maybe you also want to put in, it has to have MFA and SSO capabilities. You can turn that on as well. So you got a very broad options as far as how you use the product to define these policies. And that's all available in our CASB solution, as well as the more granular controls, right? Blocking who can download or upload from where, and all those kinds of things. So let's hop back to our Cloud Apps dashboard. We're still on our 1 month view, but then we get some more information, right? We can see the top categories that were hit. General is by far the biggest one, 86%. Usage there, computers and technology, 66%. And then it kind of goes down from there. I haven't actually tagged any apps as unsanctioned or sanctioned in here, so we don't have a ton of information there. And then you can see kind of the headquarter countries for these apps, right? We can hover over and see the detail there. But beyond that, right, maybe we want to see a little bit more data around how apps are being used. So in this case, Netflix, if this were, corporate account, you might be curious who's watching Netflix, when they're watching it, and why they're watching it, right? There might be, some expectation that your employees can use Netflix when they're traveling or after hours. But if it's in the middle of the day, all day, every day, you might have some concerns. So let's go ahead and take a look at Netflix, and we can go to App Analytics. And we can see a bit more detail about Netflix here, right? And so now we're still looking at the full month. Like we did before, we can click and zoom in on some specific days and times, but we're going to keep the broader view here. So we can see our top users and hosts is demo user did 3 gigs of Netflix. And a couple other, machines here got some hits, 250 megs, 142 megs, 788 kilobytes, not really a big deal. And we can kind of expand, our different sites here and see the usage by site, right? So demo user was fully remote over the SDP client when they used their 3 gigs. And we can see a couple other users behind, certain locations that have accessed it as well. Now, furthermore, we can, go into a little bit more detail, right? We see applications. This is Netflix that we're filtered on specifically, so we can see, its risk category, as well as some other overall information, and then the breakdown based on the different users and hosts. But let's say we wanted to, unfilter this, right? Let's turn off the Netflix filter, and then we can make this a little bit more useful, right? Because we're not just looking at Netflix. Now we can see, all the application usage in our environment across all of our user sites and locations. This is incredibly powerful, not just for identifying shadow IT, but really for, helping you understand what your users are doing. Because let's put it this way, you can't enable the business if you don't know what applications are being used. You don't know what to prioritize. You don't know how to prioritize this traffic if you don't know that something is important to your user base. And furthermore, right, you might identify applications that have been purchased separately by different people in the company, but there's the same application. And there you're missing out on the cost savings of volume licensing or bulk licensing on those products. So there are really tons of ways to help enable your organization just by identifying the applications that are, most used and how well and how often they're being used. So we have a couple other more details here we can look at. We can look at the categories as well. Right, so maybe you're very curious into, certain categories that maybe don't belong from a security perspective, or really just categories that you want to, understand more what tools are being used, right? So business systems, that's a broad category. There's probably a ton of applications in use here for most organizations, but here you can see, there's a nice mix of different things that you can get information on, as well as, the risk score and who's using it, how often it's being used. And then same user and host breakdown, right? We can look at any specific user, see the applications that they've been using, how often they're using it, and then we can get an idea of what's important to this person and what we should look at there. Same with destinations, right? What's nice about here is that typically application analytics for most CASB vendors focuses primarily on cloud, SaaS, and internet applications, but Cato, since we do full mesh connectivity and we handle east-west traffic as well, we also provide some visibility into some more local things, right? So we can expand some of these IP addresses, get some information on the usage and how often they're being hit. So if you have private apps or homegrown apps that are available on your data center or in your private cloud, they can all give you some great data here as well around those. So now that we've touched on application analytics, let's go ahead and hop into our DLP dashboard. So DLP dashboard is exactly what you think, right? It is information about DLP policies that have been hit, as well as our CASB policies. And this is great if you have specific needs around data sovereignty and want to ensure that nothing bad is getting out. So I have some policies here that do certain things, right? And this is around keeping your data secure, but it's not only around that. It's more around your overall security posture in relation to data and to cloud application usage. So we're still filtered on the last month timeline, but we can see here that we have a couple things, right? So non-compliant monitor. So I have a policy that says if it doesn't meet certain compliance requirements, that we're going to monitor it and log event activity as far as usage. We're not going to actually collect, any of the data that was being transmitted or any of that, but we'll see who accessed the site, what the site was, and this will give us an idea of maybe some further security controls we need to implement in the future. If we review that, we can get an idea of the things that people are using that maybe don't comply with our expectations for security from, internet and SaaS vendors. But more alarming is the block credit cards rule was hit 27 times. So if you are, handling PCI or anything like that, this could be PCI, it could be HIPAA, it could be personal information. There's a variety of things that it can be. We're blocking that, right? But maybe you want to know who's trying to send credit card information or upload or what they're trying to do with it. So you get a high level view there, 27 events. We'll zoom in that on a bit, but you can see here, the violations over time, right? So like I said before, you can always zoom in on a specific timeline here. And then you see severity, right? So high severity events versus medium, as well as what was allowed versus what was blocked. And then all of our top hosts for hitting these rules, the different types of violations by type, and then the data profile, right? So these were all credit card ones that we hit, as well as what country the sites were in that they hit the policy, because you'll probably have different DLP policies for different regions, depending on what type of data is involved. So we're investigating this. We see this. It's pretty alarming. Let's go ahead and go over to our credit card uploads. We'll click on that. And so we're back in our event viewer, and same event discovery window we had before, but now we're looking for something completely different, right? We want to look at app security, and we want to check out, blocking credit card uploads, right? So here we see credit card uploads blocked. A lot of this is apparently to Box, so it looks like this user is trying to upload stuff to Box that contains credit card information, right? This is a demo user, but we can also expand this event and see a little bit more detail, right? So we can see that they were trying to upload to Box, which we already knew. We can see the destination IP, the specific domain that they were accessing, the file name that they were trying to upload. So it looks like 5,000 CC records. I assume that's 5,000 credit card records. So they're trying to exfiltrate a large number of credit card records, which is really something that you shouldn't have happening, and you definitely don't want to happen. Make sure you want to get under control. Now, I know this has been a lot of time looking at different dashboards and exploring, visibility with SASE. So thank you so much for watching this. I did want to touch on one last thing before we go, and that's that all this information is exportable to wherever makes sense for you via API. Right? That could be a SIM, that could be a SOAR tool, whatever it is that you want to take this data and put it. It's up to you. But we have tons of tools in here that make it easy to use and manage natively with SASE. But you could easily go and enable the API, right? So if we want to go to API management under administration, I have a key here for my SIM API key. I have the events API enabled, and then you can quickly use this API to take this information and put it wherever you want on an ongoing basis. So once again, thank you for taking some time with me to take a look at the dashboards and visibility that you should, experience in SASE and how it is a benefit to you and your organization. Look forward to seeing you again, and have a good one until then. Thank you. Hi again, and welcome back to the Cato SASE Expert Level 3 certification application. You shouldn't have to, be linked to different things or install software and then install plugins and connect to multiple devices. You should really just be able to manage this seamlessly from one single place. Now, so we're going to take a look at the power and control that you get here, and really you get, and the ability to manage your entire deployment, but beyond that, right, complete visibility and very powerful controls over everything that's happening. So when you log into the Cato management application, the first page you see is the topology page. And this gives you a high-level view of all the users and locations connected into your Cato deployment. So what we're going to do here is we're going to click Network, and we're going to go to Bandwidth Management. So as you can see, there are a variety of priority levels that are pre-configured out of the box for the most common use cases. And these apply to pre-configured network rules as well. But in this case, we're going to create a new one. We're going to call this P5. So this will make this the highest priority traffic out of the rules that we have configured so far. And for limits, we'll put no limits because we want to prioritize this traffic, not limit it. Click Apply. You can see that our P5 limit is now added to the list. And let's go ahead and click Save. Okay, so we've successfully created our P5 bandwidth priority. Now what we're going to do is create a network rule that prioritizes traffic. Now you probably wouldn't do this exact scenario in production, but for the purposes of this demo, we're going to control Netflix traffic and prioritize it at P5. But beyond that, we're also going to egress that traffic from a dedicated private IP address in Germany. Now you could, just egress your traffic from any Cato POP location that you want, but in this case, we're going to do it with a dedicated private IP. So to get started, we'll click Network Rules. We'll go ahead and click New. And we'll call this Netflix Germany. So for the rule type, we'll go ahead and select Internet. And for rule order, let's make this 1, so it's at the very top of the list. For source, we'll leave any, but really you can choose from a variety of contexts when you're creating these policies in the real world to give you really granular control over how you're applying things. For app/category, we'll go ahead and select Application. And we're going to start typing Netflix here until it pops up, and we check the box and it's added to our list. Next, we'll expand configuration, and here's where we can configure that bandwidth priority, right? The default is the lowest, 255, but we'll go ahead and set this to 5, which is the one that we just created. We'll leave the default settings for almost everything else. Now, if we just wanted to egress the traffic from a specific location, we could select Route Via, and then add the location here from any of Cato's 80+ points of presence. But in this case, we want to egress from a specific private IP address. So we're going to select NAT, and we're going to select from our IP addresses that I've already pre-allocated. In this case, we're going to use the Frankfurt address, which is an 88.255. and we'll click apply. Okay, so we see our rule is at the top of the list, and it looks exactly how we intended, right? The source is any, the app category is Netflix, destination is internet, P5 bandwidth level, and we're gonna NAT out of our Frankfurt IP address. So let's go ahead and click save. And we're gonna get a warning because it's suggesting that we use at least 2 egress IP addresses for resiliency, but this is a demo, so it doesn't really matter. So we'll go ahead and click apply, and that will take effect in a few minutes. And just like any cloud service, right, it has to propagate across a lot of places, and rules take 2 to 5 minutes to take effect. So what we're going to do is we're going to move forward, do some additional configurations, and then we'll do some testing to show you what this looks like working. So next, we'll hop back to our monitoring tab. And as you can see in this environment, we have a couple of sites connected. We have a Houston location connected behind one of our socket X1500 devices, as well as 2 cloud data centers that are connected with virtual sockets. We also have a third-party IPsec tunnel. So you can use IPsec tunnel to connect into anything IPsec capable, whether it be one of your sites or a site from a third party that you need to access or you need to provide access to them. So let's go ahead and hop over to security and our WAN firewall. So the WAN firewall is what controls access between all the sites and users that are connected to your service. Anything that connects to Cato can access anything else if you allow it by policy.
Now the WAN firewall takes a default allow list approach.
Nothing is allowed unless it's explicitly defined here in policy. So let's go ahead and create one that allows privileged users to access the IPsec tunnel. So we'll go ahead and click new, and we'll create a new rule, and we'll call this privileged users IPsec. And then we'll leave the ruler as 1. And now you can define this policy to be, either 2 or bidirectional. In this case, 2 because we just want to access resources there. We don't want to provide any access over here. We'll go ahead and for source, for this one, we'll go ahead and select a group, and we're going to pick our privileged users group. So that's been added to the list. For device, we can leave that one the default for now. You can select some more, granular options over there. Destination, we'll go ahead and select a site. And for that site, we'll select our third-party IPsec site. So now that's defined, we can get even more granular. And if we want to just allow specific traffic, let's say SMB version 3 or something like that, we can limit this very much to, that type of traffic or based on application category, service port, whatever it is. For now, we'll just leave these all as any. For action, we'll go ahead and come down here and we'll switch this to allow. And we can check the box to log an event anytime this policy is utilized. And then for time, we'll leave no time constraint. You can create, custom limits or limit certain things to certain hours if desired. But for this case, we'll just leave it as anything. So we'll go ahead and click apply. And we'll click save. Okay, so that rule has been saved. And like I said before, it usually takes a few minutes to take effect. But it's really powerful to be able to give your users access to really any resource that they need in just a matter of minutes. No complicated manual configurations, command line, any of that. Everything just, works. The next thing we're going to test is really a functionality of our IPS engine. And so this is geo-restriction. So geo-restriction, if you didn't figure it out by the name, really allows you to control which countries your organization interacts with on, a data transfer and internet basis. In this case, we're going to go ahead and create a new policy here, and we're going to call it block Russia. So you can do outbound, inbound, or both. We'll do both in this case. And then we're going to go ahead and select Russia from our list. We'll type it in, and there it is. And so it's been added to the list. For actions, you can pick, block, monitor, allow. In this case, we'll do block because that's what we want to do. And it automatically will log an event for you. So we'll click apply. And once again, we'll click save. And, this policy should take effect in just a few minutes. So the next thing that we want to do is I'm going to create a policy for Salesforce. So let's go ahead and review what we have existing in our internet firewall. So if you remember, we just touched on the WAN firewall, which is connectivity between your locations and users, and the internet firewall controls all of your traffic that goes to the internet. So we have a pre-created rule here that blocks Salesforce. So this blocks Salesforce, for any user in the company. It's #1 policy on the list, and it applies to any user on any device. What we're going to do is we're going to create a new rule. So we're going to create this new rule, and we're going to use device context to say that if the endpoint is running Windows Defender antivirus, that they should be allowed to access Salesforce.com. Now you probably want to, use a different antivirus, or maybe have some, more context in there under who can access Salesforce, specifically people who use it for a zero trust approach. But in this case, we're going to just allow anyone who has Windows Defender with the active protection running to access it. So in this case, we'll call this allow SFDC compliant devices. And we'll move this to number 1, so it's at the top of the list. And I'm going to add this to my lab rules section just for my own ease of management. So for source, we'll go ahead and leave any. And devices where we really want to make some changes. Now you can specify, what country that the user is in when they're trying to access it. You can specify what operating system they're on. But in this case, we're going to go to device posture profiles. Now I've pre-created a profile that's called Windows Default, and it really only has one aspect to it. And it checks to ensure that Windows Defender is installed and that real-time protection is enabled. So we'll go ahead and select that device posture profile here. For app category, we'll go ahead and select application, and we'll type Salesforce and select it, and it's been added. We can leave service import as any. For actions, we'll change this to allow. We'll log an event just for auditing purposes, and we'll click apply. All right, we'll click save. And that has been saved and should be ready to go. The next thing we'll do is take a look at TLS inspection. Now, there are a couple of approaches to implementing TLS inspection. It's very difficult to, it's really unlikely that you would be able to inspect everything. There are privacy concerns regarding, health and medicine and finance. And one approach is what we have pre-configured here is really, only inspecting traffic. Change this to inspect. We're going to click apply, and we're going to click save. Now, if you take a look at this note up here, right, all traffic is inspected by default. So really this policy doesn't do anything until we create a second policy. So we're going to create a second one, and we're going to call this bypass all. We'll leave that as rule order 2. Source is any, what can also be any, and we're going to put this at the bottom, bypass as the action. So we'll apply. Now keep in mind, like most rule sets you're used to, they are applied in order. So right, if we're in a cheating, alcohol and tobacco anonymizer, one of those website categories, it's going to hit that policy first and be inspected. If it's not one of those categories, it's going to pass through, hit the bypass all rule, and be bypassed from inspection. So let's go ahead and click save. And just like that, in a couple of minutes, we've really narrowed down our TLS inspection policy, and it makes sense for the organization. So now that we've done that, let's do a couple other things. And then we'll get into some testing, into some really nice visual stuff. So one of the challenges with adopting a SASE solution is onboarding your new users. Now, Cato provides you a variety of ways, and most SASE vendors should as well. If you go ahead and take a look, we'll navigate to Access and Directory Services. So from here, you can configure some directory services integration. You can even do single sign-on with Okta, Azure AD, OneLogin, things like that. You can enable SCIM provisioning. But we're going to do an LDAP sync today with an on-premise Active Directory server. Now, what's interesting here too is if we look at the user provisioning tab, is that we're automatically sending invitation emails. You can also change that to a registration code or something like that. But in this case, right, once the users are imported, they'll get an email saying, please welcome to Cato and please get set up, right? They can set their password for Cato separately if you're not using single sign-on. And they can download the Cato client as well as the certificate that they will need. So let's go ahead and get this configured. We have no configurations now under LDAP. We'll go ahead and click New. For LDAP provider, we'll select Microsoft because this is on-premise Active Directory. Our domain name there is cato.000. And let's set our login DN. And then our base DN. And then I'll carefully type in my password. So for everything else, we'll leave it as the default. We'll go ahead and click Save to save our progress. And next, what we have to do is define the domain controllers that we're going to use for this. Now, what's really cool is that the domain controller sits behind Cato, so Cato can securely access it through the service and then over the tunnel. And you no longer have to stand up a read-only domain controller in a DMZ somewhere. So it's definitely simplified. For here we have a couple options. We can go ahead and manually specify an IP address or host name. But in this case, I've actually predefined my host for use in other parts of the management application. So we have host and we have our DC defined here as 192.168.10.30 at our Houston site. So go ahead and do that, and then we'll click save. Okay, so now we're ready to select the groups that we want to import. For SDP user groups, we'll go ahead and click that and let it load. It takes a couple of seconds because it's querying the domain controller for all available groups in the area that we specified. So it looks like that's loaded, and we'll go ahead and select our Cato group. So that's been added to the list, and we'll turn on the daily sync for this group as well. Once again, we'll do the same for user awareness. Still takes a couple of seconds because it's querying the domain controller again just to make sure there's been no changes in the meantime, but we'll select that same Cato group when it comes up. So here we go, Cato, we'll turn on daily sync, and we'll go ahead and click save and close. So give that a couple seconds to update on our page here with our groups. So everything looks pretty good. We have our Cato.000. Oh, I have a small typo there. See, that's why you verify. So go and add our missing O. We'll save and close. And we'll give it a second to refresh again. And there we go, Cato.000. Our LDAP provider is Microsoft, our DC domain controller, and then our Cato groups. Now we just configured this and it pulled the groups fine, but we might want to click test connection just to make sure everything is good. So this will take a couple seconds as well, but once it's done, we'll get a success message, ideally, and then we should be ready to synchronize our users and groups. So there we go, success. So now we can go ahead and click sync now. So it's going to fetch the information from the domain controller, and then we'll see the new groups and users that we're going to import. So as you can see, I have a nice list of users here. It automatically created the groups, but I've got 19 users that we're going to import, and I'll just hit submit. So we'll give that a second to synchronize as it applies these changes for these 19 users. It's all done. We'll go ahead and click close. And if we go to access users, we can see that our new users have been added. And they're all configured here as invitation sent for the most part. A couple are new, they're queued for the invitations, but invitation sent means that the user should have their email in their inbox anytime now and should be able to go ahead and self-service provision the rest of it. Fortunately, I don't have time to show you the email or any of that, but it's all there. And so now that that's done, let's test some of the stuff that we configured, right? So first thing is probably Netflix, right? So let's go ahead and go to Netflix, netflix.com. And as you can see, we have Netflix Germany loaded. And I'll go ahead and sign in. Log in as myself. And we could start this great show playing in the background. And it'll take a second to load because it's all the way from Germany, but look, it loads fine. The resolution is great. There's no issues with buffering or performance. I have it muted just so you can hear me talk, but everything is working great even though it's coming from Germany. We'll leave that running because we're going to look at some other things around it later. But let's go ahead and test our geolocation, right? So our geo restriction, we blocked Russian websites. So let's go ahead and try the Russian government's website and see what we get. So it looks like we were unable to access that. It says malicious content was detected. That's only because the IPS engine is what's actually blocking it. But in reality, it was blocked because of our geo restriction rule. So the other thing that we configured was only allowing Salesforce when Windows Defender is installed, as well as in real-time protection mode. So let's check out salesforce.com. So as you can see, it's blocked still because currently I have real-time protection mode disabled. So let me go ahead and enable that on my own, and then we'll reload this page, and we should be able to get in with just that slight change. There's a couple seconds, it's enabling. It looks like it's up. We'll just give it a few more seconds just to make sure that everything is synchronized. And let's go ahead and refresh this page. So you see, just like that with device context, we're able to provide more secure access based on the security posture of the device, where the user is when they're using the device, all these kinds of context to really give you a better security posture with more granular control. Now, if we hop back over to our Kiddo management application, we'll click on monitoring tab, and let's go ahead and take a look at our Houston site. So we click Houston, and we have some really nice information here about the site and its ISP links, but we want to look at some things that are happening right now, right? So let's go ahead and click real time, and we can see some real-time information about what's going on here. And so you can see the throughput. If we expand, our different WAN connections, give it a second, we'll get some top host and IP information, top host and app information about what's going on. So as you can see, my Windows machine is the top on both, but you can see our Netflix traffic is going through here at 1.22 megabits per second, 3.5 megabits per second. But you can see all the things that are running in real time right now through the service. Now maybe we want to investigate QoS, see how our rules are being used, maybe make sure that we have them tuned exactly how we want them. So let's go ahead and click on QoS here instead of transport. So you can see that P5 rule that we created, it's being used by the Netflix Germany rule. We can expand that, and we can see that my Windows machine here is using it currently, and it's being prioritized as the top priority level. So really nice real-time information. If you want to see more, you can get actually historical information related to these same kinds of areas by clicking Network Analyzer. So for the Network Analyzer, we can actually see a lot of great detail around how we're using our different transport links. And you can expand details, and then we can see kind of our maximum throughput, average throughput, packet loss, and my personal favorite is our last mile packet loss, right? So we can proactively monitor several URLs. There's some predefined in here, but you can define your own, and we'll send periodic pings to them, and you can see kind of how the packet loss looks. Now, if you're very curious, you see there's a little bit of a peak here. We got a little bit more packet loss, which is very minimal. Maybe you want to zoom in on that. You can easily select and drag and highlight an area, and the entire page will adjust to that specific time range. So you can see everything that was happening at a network level in your environment at that time, and know what you're doing and know where to start troubleshooting if you're having an issue. Now back on the QoS side, we can actually click Priority Analyzer here, and we can see some other information about how these priority rules are being used. And like everything in our console, you can go here and you can expand the date range to about a month. So we just configured this rule a minute ago, right? So we're not going to have much data for the month, but it really gives you a nice historical view into what is happening with your different bandwidth priority levels. So the last thing before we finish up here is we'll hop over to monitoring again, and we'll go to our events. Now, if you look in the events, everything that is a system event, a connectivity event, it's all logged in here, as well as anything from a security firewall policy perspective that you have set to log an event. And if you look in here, we can actually see, what we just did, right? We blocked Salesforce because we weren't connected with device posture, but we see all this great information about this. And all this information can, be exported to some of your choice if you want. But if you really only care about the Kiddo information, we have some great SIM-like functionality in here. You can select from a variety of presets. All right, so maybe we want to look at only internet firewall rules. So here's all our internet firewall hits recently, but then maybe you want to filter that even more. We want to look at block only, so we'll add that to the filter. And you can even come up here and form your own queries if you like. But here we go, we've got a bunch of hits blocking Salesforce, based on what we just discussed. So the final few things that we'll look at before we're done here is our threats dashboard. So the threats dashboard gives you a fantastic high-level view into all the threat and security activity in your environment. We're only looking at the last 2 days. We can expand this out further if we want and get some more data. And you can see some great things like the top threats that have been encountered in the environment, how often they've been encountered, a timeline. So it looks like we've been pretty clean up until about today. And same here, top countries, right? We can see Ireland and the Russian Federation are our top 2 threat areas, as well as our top hosts that are being faced with threats, what kinds of threats, what kinds of files we find threats in, and which users are responsible for being subjected to these threats. And just like I showed you before, we can go ahead and click and zoom here, and we can look at this very specific time period. And the same, you can go ahead and click here and actually go to the event viewer, and you can see all the events related to that specific activity. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for joining this demo, and enjoy the rest of the SASE Expert Level 3 certification. See you next time.
Yeah.